The human experience, with our flaws, our passions, our triggers, our inspirations, and our imprints. If we could see behind everyone's story, then perhaps what we would have is deep compassion. In this podcast, I get the chance to explore these stories from some truly fascinating people in some honest and heartwarming conversations. And best of all, I get to share these discussions with you. I'm Lael Stone, and this is Humans Being. Welcome to Humans Being. I'm Lael Stone. It is a pleasure to have you with me. Today, I want to talk a bit about parenting. If you've followed me for a while, you know that parenting has been something I've spoken to for many, many years. It's something that I have a deep love and respect for. I think it's one of the most important jobs that we can have in this world is to be a parent and to raise our kids as consciously as possible. However, it is also one of the most challenging jobs that we can actually do. You know, many years ago, I created an 8-week parenting immersion for parents to come and be heard and to hear from other parents. And in these 8 weeks, I was creating tools for parents to use when their kids were having a hard time, when they had big feelings, or when they wouldn't cooperate. And I soon began to realize, and especially after listening to hundreds and hundreds of people's stories, that it wasn't necessarily about the tools that we need in parenting, but it is more about what goes on for us and what goes on inside of us. And that is one of the things that I want to lean into today. How do we turn up and be the best parent that we want to be? And why do we get triggered? And why are we reactive? And why does it push my buttons so much when my child won't listen to me? Or why do I get so angry when my kids fight? So I want to lean into some of those themes today to take a look at why we react the way that we do. Because I know that we all start off as parents hoping or thinking that we will be calm, we will be connected, we will love every minute of it. Yet that is often not the reality. Often the reality is we can feel, despondent around what's happening. We can feel frustrated by parenting. We can feel angry at our partners for turning up in the ways that we don't want. We can feel disappointed in ourselves. We can have shame. We can carry guilt. It's a lot. There's a lot that we carry as parents. Yet I have found that parenting is one of the most profound insights into who we really are that we can receive. Parenting is one of those incredible opportunities to see our shadow, to feel into the wounds that we need to heal, and to have the opportunity to raise conscious humans that can do good on this planet. It's a big job and it's not easy. So let's lean into why it can feel so challenging, why it feels really hard. I want to start by looking at the beautiful imprints that we have that we receive from our own upbringing. So my first invitation for you is to just think for a second. I want you to think about the way you were raised. So you all of a sudden might be thinking about, I do remember playing cricket with my dad, or perhaps I remember baking with my mum, or maybe you remember, riding your bikes with your siblings. And what memories pop up for you when you think about your childhood? Are they happy ones? Or are they ones where you feel a bit sad? Or perhaps you have no memory of your childhood, which is not uncommon because for a lot of people, their childhoods perhaps were a little bit distressing, or maybe there were some traumas that happened. And the way of protecting ourselves is to sometimes not remember what happened. But whatever ever glimpses you have or memories you have, I invite you to just sit with them for a second. Feel into, when I think about my childhood, what comes up for me? Is it a mixture of happy stuff? Is it a mixture of the sad stuff? Is there just kind of a numbness that sits there? And I want to invite you to just be kind and compassionate to yourself because there's no right or wrong within it. Just be curious as to what's there. Now, I invite you to take another step further and see if you can remember what it felt like when you were angry as a child, or perhaps when you felt really sad. Maybe you felt scared, or perhaps when you made a mistake. What do you remember about how your parents responded to you? Can you remember if they got angry at you? Maybe they yelled. Perhaps you got smacked. Maybe you got sent to your room. Or did your parents lean in? Did they listen to how you felt? Were their arms always open and welcome of your big feelings? What was there for you? Now, this can feel like a confronting thing to think about. And I think having spent nearly 20 years listening to people's stories, particularly around the way they were raised, I know that most of you will be listening to this realizing that perhaps you didn't get your needs met in the way that you wanted. Perhaps your parents weren't able to lean in when you were sad and when you were upset. Perhaps you were yelled at or you were shamed or you were told that you were being ridiculous or you were too much or stop being so sensitive or you're being dramatic. And I want to just pause for a second and hold a bit of a container for your parents or your grandparents or whoever your caregivers were. A big part of what I talk about is the compassion piece, the compassion around that humans are often doing the best job that they know how with the tools that they've got. And if you're listening to this podcast, I would dare say that you are a person that grew up in what we call the behaviorism paradigm. And what the behaviorism paradigm is a way of raising children that says we love you when you're good, and when you're bad, we're going to take something away from you. Children learn very early on, very quickly, that in order to be loved, I must get the approval of the adults around me, or in order to be loved, I must achieve or be good or excel at something. And so often what happens when we are raised in this behaviorism paradigm, we create a story, an imprint that says, I'm only lovable when I'm good. And then what happens is we spend most of our life looking for approval, looking outside of ourselves for others to say you're doing a good job or you're enough. And then we create a story that says maybe we're not lovable, maybe we're not enough. I am only worthy if I have all these external things to show, or people think I'm magnificent. And as always, the reality actually is that we are all born enough. The moment for you, if you're a parent, you held your child in your hands and you looked at them, I know that you weren't sitting there thinking, I don't know if they're enough. Of course not. You looked at your child and you thought, they are amazing. They are the world in this tiny little body. And that's how we were all born. We were all born enough. Yet sometimes the way we were raised and sometimes what society tells us, we take on board a different story. So let's come back to your parents for a minute. Let's come back to your grandparents or your caregivers. They too were responding to their environment. They too were probably parenting in a way that they were raised or they were parented or the way that society says they should. And when we lean into these stories around how we were raised, it is so normal and natural for us to feel angry, for us to have rage that our parents weren't able to meet us in the way we wanted. It is so normal for us to feel upset and sad. And I invite you to hold two things at once, which is we can feel sad and angry for what we never got. And at the same time, we can still feel grateful and love our parents. Both can exist. And my invitation when it comes to parenting, because this often turns up in parenting, especially when our kiddos won't do what we want them to do, or we get really triggered when they're, not listening to us or something going on. When we often can trace the steps back to why does this feel triggering, a lot of the time it comes back to the fact that we never received the love and the attention and the holding that perhaps we deeply needed. So it brings up feelings, it pushes our buttons. And I really believe that those feelings and buttons that get pushed are there to help us heal. There are invitations for us to heal the wounds of what might be present for us. So then we don't carry the same stories onto our children. So we can see that all of us are going to have story. And we can see that most of us maybe will go through a phase where we feel angry at our parents, or we'll feel upset, or we'll feel mad that we didn't actually get what we wanted. And it's important to feel those feelings. I always say, the idea isn't to ring your parents and say, you never did this, or to write them a letter. If you have feelings, those feelings are yours, and they're yours to sit with, and they're yours to process. Our parents were doing the best they could, and I know that can feel very, very painful, especially if you were mistreated, particularly if you were hurt or you had any form of abuse. And if you did, I am deeply, deeply sorry for your experiences. But I'm sure many of you are aware that hurt people hurt people. And we see this with generations, and we see this with trauma, that it is often passed down, sometimes unconsciously. And what I see, though, in this moment in time is we have access to this information, and we have access to research, and we have access to tools and support that perhaps our parents or our grandparents never had. And at this moment in time, if you are a parent, you have the opportunity to heal perhaps the wounds from your own past, but also to draw a line in the sand to not carry it forward for your children. And this is why I feel that parents these days are some of the most bravest parents that exist, because you are the ones that are willing to look at the past and heal it, and then turn towards the future and choose to do something different. And it's not easy, because what we're doing is we're often reparenting ourselves whilst we're parenting our children at the same time. And if you've never heard of the word reparenting, what it refers to is leaning into those parts of our childhood where perhaps we never were heard, we didn't get our needs met in the way we wanted to, and it's bringing that adult version of you to the younger child version of you, and holding space for all those feelings that perhaps surfaced at that time. It's giving them the words and the love and the attention that they never received. It's holding a tender space for the younger version of us so that we can lean in, love on it, integrate it, and then allow the adult us to move through life. I often say that we are often wounded children walking around in adult bodies, which is true. And we know that that is true because it's when we get reactive with our kids, or when our partner does something we don't like, or a colleague at work says something and we get all fired up, and we get angry. There's usually a sign that something is going on within us. And usually those feelings within us are connected to the younger parts of us that perhaps need healing or listening, or a space held for the things that happen for us. So we come back to the reality now and where we're sitting as a parent. And as you've been listening to me, perhaps you are reflecting and thinking, yeah, maybe my parents didn't meet me in that way, but in other ways they did. And again, I want to hold a big container of compassion to our parents, because they were doing what they could at the time. And, in 20, 30, 40 years' time, perhaps our children will be sitting here saying the same thing about us. Yeah, our parents were doing the best they could with what was around at the time. But what can we do now? What can we do in this moment? What can we do now when we get triggered as a parent? What can we do now to do our own work so we stop passing on these stories, so we stop passing on these traumas? What can we do? Well, the first thing that I think we can do is bring some understanding to children and to how they operate in the world. So the two biggest things that parents often reach out to me around, the first one is, how do I deal with my kids' big feelings? And the second one is, how do I get my kids to cooperate? And so they are usually the two places where we get triggered. They are usually the places where all our own feelings and stories pop up. So let's start with the feelings first. So you may have heard me say many times before that kids are either what I call in balance or out of balance. And you know when your child's in balance because you can hear them singing in their bedroom. They might be playing beautifully with their sibling. You ask them to do something and they do it. They tell you about what's going on in their world. And in those moments, you can tune in and you can tell their nervous system's calm, they're feeling good in their being. And usually that's when kids will cooperate the most, when they're in balance. But when a child is out of balance, it's where you can, see them walk past their sibling and elbow them in the head, or you can, hear them picking a fight, or, you ask them to do something and they either ignore you or just say, why do I have to do everything? And we can tell when our kids are out of balance. We all can, because we can kind of sense it even before they walk in the room. Or we just take one look at them and we can see the agitation. We can see that there's something going on. And I know as a parent, that often when that happens, the thoughts in our head go to, what now? Or Why do they have to, what are they going to do? Why do they have to be like this? And my invitation is always to parents is to get curious and go, I wonder why they're out of balance. I wonder why they're feeling like this in this moment. And, I usually say there's 3 reasons why our kids can be out of balance. The first reason may be because there's a need that's not being met, which is that they need a cuddle, or perhaps they need food, or maybe they're tired, or maybe they need some help with something that they're doing. And when we meet that need, then they usually feel okay. Sometimes our kids are out of balance because they just haven't had enough connection with us for that day. Sometimes what they need is just a little bit of play, a little bit of presence, a little bit of tuning in. And when we tune in with them, then everything settles. Or maybe they're out of balance because they need more information, because they're feeling frustrated, because they're unsure of what's going on, and their nervous system is saying to them, hey, I have to go and do this new thing and I feel scared about it and I need more information. And that's what's spiraling around within them. And when we give them some more information, they feel a little more settled. But one of the biggest reasons why our kids can be out of balance can be to do with stress. It can be to do with trauma that may be sitting there. It can be just to do with the fact that our lives are busy. Our lives ask a lot of us. And for children particularly, they wake up, and from the moment they wake up, they are told what to do all day. And, sometimes there's wisdom in that, because, we don't really want a 3-year-old to just, dictate what happens in the family, right? We do need to guide our children. But in an average day, a child is told maybe 20 times to get dressed, go to the toilet now, you need to eat this, put your bag away. At school, there's even more stresses that go on. You must learn this thing, even if you don't like it. Somebody's mean to you in the playground. Perhaps your teenager, feels like she's being excluded from her friends, or maybe they get a test back and they didn't get the mark that they wanted, or perhaps they didn't get picked in the basketball team. All these stresses happen in an average day for a child, and they build up in their little bodies, and then they come home, and then when they ask for just one thing and we say no, or perhaps we give them that thing but it's the wrong colored cup, or we cut it the wrong way, or there's none left, all of a sudden they just explode with all these feelings in front of us. And that is not a bad thing, and that is not a bad child. That is usually just a child that has a whole lot of stress and a big backpack of feelings going on. And they come home to you, who are the safe place, and all of a sudden they're laying it at your feet. Yet, if we grew up in an environment where feelings were punished, or we were yelled at, or where we got shamed for being upset, then often in those moments when our kids are laying those feelings at our feet, our nervous system responds, and we can hear warning signs going off in our bodies that say things like, this is dangerous, we need to stop it right now. Or if my child doesn't stop behaving like this, then they're going to grow up to be a brat. Or what will people think? Or my child's too soft and vulnerable, or all the things that go on in our heads. But more than anything, what I have found over the years of working with many parents, it's the thought that this feels dangerous, and we often don't even know why it feels dangerous. But particularly if we grew up in environments where we were punished or we were shamed, then what happens in those moments when our kids are upset is it activates that feeling inside of us, and we don't want to feel it. We want to stop it. We want to shut it down. So what do? Well, we either get angry and we get big and we power over our children. So we yell at them to stop, or we tell them, I'll give you something to cry about, or we do whatever we can do to make them stop what they're feeling. Or perhaps we go into pleading, we give in to whatever their demands are, or we try and fix it instantly. But actually in that moment, what our kids need is they need an adult who can take a deep breath, who can get down on their level, and who can say what they see. And they might say something like, you're really mad. Or I can see that you're angry. Or it's okay to be upset, let it out. And in those moments when we can calm ourselves enough and we can bring that to our child, what that does is it brings a safety to children, and it energetically says to them, I can see you're scared, I can see your anger, I can see your upset, I can see your fear, and all of that is welcome. I can hold it. I can meet you in it. I can bring safety to you in these moments. Let it out. Let it move. And as they do, they cry, maybe they rage, maybe they talk a lot, Maybe they even laugh. But as the storm passes, they then find themselves back in balance with an imprint and a story that says, I can bring the hard stuff to my parent. And again, I invite you to think back to being a child where you were scared or angry or you made a mistake or you were upset. What is it that you wanted from your parents in that moment? Did you want them to turn away and look in the opposite direction? Did you want them to shame you? Did you want them to make you wrong? Did you want them to laugh or mock you? Of course not. Nobody wanted that. What they wanted is an adult who accepted all of them, all of what was present. They wanted a calm adult in that moment to say, I see you and I love you, even the messiest parts of you. Because as a human, we have fundamental needs not to be fixed, but to just be heard, to be witnessed, to be seen. I mean, isn't that what we all want? Other humans to say, hey, all of you is welcome here. Even as I say those words, can you take a moment and tune into how does that feel in your body? How does it feel as I say that? Is that what you would have wanted? Or maybe there's some sadness coming up for you now that perhaps you haven't been able to turn up for your kiddos in that way. And I get that. I 100% get that. I've been a mother for 25 years now, and probably those first 8 or 9 years of parenting, I wasn't able to do that. I didn't have the skills or the space or the understanding to know that perhaps that's a way that I could turn up for my kids. I just wanted to make it all right all the time. I was a very good permissive parent, which basically meant I had no boundaries with my kids and I just wanted them to be happy. So I spent most of my time trying to make them happy, which I have to tell you never worked because no one's meant to be happy all the time. And it was very exhausting and often just made me incredibly resentful because I wasn't getting my needs met. And really all I was trying to do is band-aid all these feelings that were sitting there for my kids. And so they just would continue to spill out the side. And it wasn't until I had my third child and I learnt a bit more and I realized that there was a bit of trauma there, that I had to do this work and realized that there was another way to be with my kids. Yet that also brought up a whole lot of grief around the fact that there was 8 or 9 years there where I wasn't able to meet them in the way that I wanted. I wasn't able to be with them in the fire, in those big feelings. But I made a commitment to myself to believe in healing and to open up to the possibility of repair. And so in each moment I had where I could, and I couldn't always, but where I could, I would take a deep breath when my kids got upset. I'd get down on their level and I would say, tell me more. Or I would say, I'm right here with you. Or I would say, let it out. You're doing a good job. And I would try and steady myself and hold the storm as best as I could. And in the beginning, it was wobbly. I have to tell you, it was hard. I didn't really do a very good job of it. But each time I did, and I began to see the evidence of my kids coming back into balance, and each time I began to see the feelings shift in a different way, I began to see that meeting my kids in this way was not only healing for them, it was healing for me, but it was creating a new imprint of movement in my family to let my children know that it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be sad, and there's healthy ways that we can express them, and that all of them is welcome. So if you're sitting here listening and perhaps maybe guilt is popping up for you, or maybe shame is sitting there, or maybe you just feel sad that perhaps you haven't been able to do it, I invite you to give yourself the biggest dose of compassion. I invite you to be kind to yourself, to know that we too have been doing the best job we know how. And it is never too late. It is never too late to repair. It is never too late to listen. It is never too late to bring an open, compassionate heart to another human. And yes, it may feel clunky, and yes, it may be messy in the beginning. But when we begin to make a commitment to meet others with that loving kindness that we have deeply wanted, especially to our children, then that's where we see changes happen. Now, I also know as I say this, that it's not as easy as just going, right, tomorrow that's what I'm going to do, right? It's not always that easy because we have our triggers and we have our hurts that sit there. And this is why the invitation, and you may have heard this phrase, we have to do the work. And you might be sitting there thinking, what the is doing the work, right? But doing the work is our ability to lean in, to look at these pain, to look at these stories, to look at how we want to do it differently. And sometimes that means going to therapy. Sometimes it's just talking to a listening partner. Sometimes it is journaling. Sometimes it is just making a commitment with your partner to be conscious of the way we turn up, to do it differently. It's going to look different for all of you. And it's not easy. I really invite you to understand, that it can feel messy and it can feel clunky, but I absolutely promise you it is worth it. It is beyond worth it. Because one of the greatest gifts you can give your children is your beautiful, calm nervous system, is your willingness to look at your own story, is the ability to see your past and know that it can be shifted and changed so you can actually create the future that you want to create. It's possible, but it takes courage. It takes courage to lean in. It takes courage to say sorry. It takes courage to ask for help. It's funny after all these years of doing this work, and especially when I talk to parents about having better self-care or setting better boundaries or that kind of stuff, they often find it very hard to do it for themselves. But if I say to them, what kind of imprint do you want to give your kids? If I was to say to your kids in 20 years' time, what did your parents model to you about self-care or healthy boundaries or meeting their needs? What do you want them to say? Because our kids are watching always. And if you want your kids to have good self-care and you want your kids to have good boundaries, well, then you have to show them how to do it. So sometimes we won't make the shift for us, but we'll do it for our children and then our children's children because it continues on. So I'm going to invite you. I'm going to invite you to take one step forward into what can I do to shift some of these stories that might be here? What parts do I want to heal? Particularly when it comes to big feelings, particularly when it comes to creating new imprints and stories around love, compassion, empathy, and understanding that we're all human. Now, the second part of what I was saying before, around what parents, often want to know, often it's about how do I deal with big feelings? How do I meet them with calm? How do I help my children process them? Well, we model what it can look like. We model healthy anger. We model feeling our feelings, letting them go. We turn up with empathy, which models to them how they can be empathetic beings. We do all of that. But the second part of one of the most challenging things is how I get my kids to cooperate. And again, it kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying first of all, is that kids will cooperate and kids often do better when they feel better. But when kids are out of balance and they've got a big backpack full of feelings that they're lugging around, it's often very hard for them to cooperate. It's hard for them to do the homework when, they're really stressed or there's a whole lot of stuff swirling inside of them. There's a lot of anxiety going on, or perhaps, when they're feeling worried about the swimming carnival on Friday, or perhaps when, their best friend's not talking to them. Or it's hard sometimes for a 4-year-old to get in the bath, particularly if they've been at kinder all day and haven't seen you and, they've been in a space with 20 other kids and they're navigating what it is to be a little 4-year-old. And perhaps it's very hard to do what they're told because actually what they need to do first is offload all these big feelings and stresses from the day, or perhaps they need a bit of connection. So I often say to parents, if we want cooperation, we have to check the connection first. We have to tune into our kiddos and go, where are they? Are they in balance? Are they out of balance? Where are they on this spectrum of feelings in this moment? And if they're in balance, then more than likely, with a little bit of playfulness, with a bit of choice and autonomy, often they will cooperate. But if they're feeling really out of balance, if their nervous system's kind of off the charts, if they are feeling a little bit scared or out of control or any of those things, then often it's very hard for them to cooperate. So my invitation is, when we need our kids to do something, we have to check the connection first. Do we need a little bit of playfulness before we invite them to come and set the table for dinner? Do we need just to hear about their day and snuggle up on their bed and hear about, who's friends with who and who got picked in this team and who's cheating on a test? Do we need to have those conversations first before we ask them to fold the washing and put stuff away? Always check the connection, because connection often equals cooperation. And that connection is on us. It's never a child's job to bring that to us. It's our job to bring that to them. And while we're at it, it's never a child's job to be emotionally responsible for us. We are the adults here. We are the guides. And it's a big job. My goodness, it's one of the most important jobs you will ever do in the world, to lead your children. But part of that is doing your own work. Part of it is being aware and attuned enough of our stories, our triggers, things that surface for us, so that we can do the healing work so we don't pass it on to them. So as I finish up, one more little tip that I'd love to offer you around this is that we are all going to be triggered at some point with our kids, because we're human. It's easy to be a great parent when you've had a full night's sleep, there's heaps of money in your bank, someone's made you dinner or your washing's folded, life is great. It's so much easier to be a calm, connected, fun, playful parent when all those things are going on. But when we're stressed, when we're worried about money, when we're not taking care of our health, perhaps we're worried about our parents, let alone what's going on in the world, when we're feeling worried and stressed and all those things are going on, it can often be a lot harder to attune to our kids. It can be a lot harder to have patience. It can be really hard to be playful when we're feeling like that. So as always, one of the most important things when we're looking at how do we stop yelling or how do we stop getting triggered, well, we have to start with taking care of you. The first step is always put your own oxygen mask on. The first step is always, how do I meet my needs so I can turn up and be the parent I want to be? Now, sometimes that can just be a 15-minute walk by yourself around the block. Sometimes it can be having a bath by yourself and just listening to your favorite music. Sometimes it's just saying a limit around something and making sure you drink a warm, hot cup of tea. Sometimes it is calling a friend and leaving a message just around all the big things that are on your mind and on your heart. Sometimes it's going to therapy, sometimes it's going to yoga, sometimes it's catching up with a mate. Whatever that looks like for you, that helps you come back to your center, that helps you calm your nervous system, that is a good thing for the whole family. I mean, that is maintenance. It is maintenance that the more we do that, and the less likely we are to be reactive, the less likely we are to yell and get triggered with our kids when we're meeting our needs. And the other thing, that we need to do is we need to be aware in those moments when we are getting triggered, when we are wanting to yell, when we are getting really fired up, is just to take a note. I know we don't want to be like that, but to just clock it and go, you know what? I'm yelling a lot. There's something here. It's time for me to lean into this work. Do I need to go speak to someone? Do I need to take a bit a deeper look into why I get so angry, why I get so activated? It is an invitation for you to lean in. And in the heat of the moment, when we're feeling angry, when, all those feelings are bubbling within us, I know we all know about taking a deep breath, but sometimes that deep breath does nothing. And sometimes what we need to do in the minute is we need to step out of the room if we can. Maybe we need to go and run some cold water on our hands and put it on the backs of our neck and just take a breath and remember this is not an emergency. It just feels big in this moment. Sometimes we need to stand in the kitchen and shake our body and try and move all that energy that we're feeling. Sometimes we just need to say, I am frustrated. I'm feeling really angry. I've got a whole lot of feelings going on. These are mine. Sometimes we just need to name it to tame it. Sometimes we just need to sigh really loudly. And sometimes we just need to take it minute by minute. It's a work in progress, right? And if you're triggered and you're angry, then you are not broken. You are just human. And often it's a messenger to say, what needs to shift here? Do I need a break? Do I need some more support? Do I need to lean a bit more into my feelings? Do I need to look a bit more at my story? I want to offer you that it is possible to be the parent that you all want to be. I mean, no parent is perfect, right? We're all going to have days where we don't get it right. And that's why we have repair. And repair is beautiful because it models to our children healthy ways to repair. And it also shows them that we're not perfect and we're human. And we want our kids to grow up knowing that nobody's perfect. But more than anything on those days, I invite you to have compassion for yourself. I invite you to put your hand on your heart and just say, today is a hard day and I'm doing the best I can. And then lean into those circles of support, write it in your journal, be kind to yourself, and know that each day is a new day. So if you take anything from this podcast now, I hope you take with you that we are all human and we all have a story. And our story can be magnificent and it can guide us to do amazing things. And it can also keep us stuck and it can also, keep us trapped in some of the stories of the past. But all of our stories are there to be built upon, to be changed, to create something magnificent for the future. So be brave and courageous. Lean in, do the work. I promise you, your kids will thank you. Thanks for joining me today. I hope this has helped. Until next time. Thanks for sharing this time with me. You can find my book, Own Your Story, at bookshops or listen to the audiobook on Audible. I even read it myself. You can stay connected with Humans Being on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. We love to hear from you, so please leave a comment, question, or contemplation. And visit my website, laelstone.com.au, where you'll find heaps of great resources and courses for you to explore. This podcast is produced by Nigel Carboon, recorded by the crew at We Make Online Videos, and our original music is created by Josh Reed. Humans Being is produced on the lands of the Bunurong and Wadawurrung people. We pay respect to their unique and diverse cultures and to elders past, present, and future. Until next time, stay connected and don't forget to be human. Thanks for sharing this time with me. You can find my book, Own Your Story, at bookshops or listen to the audiobook on Audible. I even read it myself. You can stay connected with Humans Being on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. We love to hear from you, so please leave a comment, question, or contemplation. And visit my website, laelstone.com.au, where you'll find heaps of great resources and courses for you to explore. This podcast is produced by Nigel Carboon, recorded by the crew at We Make Online Videos, and our original music is created by Josh Reed. Humans Being is produced on the lands of the Bunurong and Wadawurrung people. We pay respect to their unique and diverse cultures and to elders past, present, and future. Until next time, stay connected and don't forget to be human.